Shalom. Welcome to Alien Con 2019 Los Angeles. I'm Ariel Tzadok, KosherTorah School. You find us online at KosherTorah.com. As you know, our topic now is going to be discussing aliens, angels, and demons. We'll chat for a little bit, and hopefully then we'll open up for Q&A at the end. Does that sound okay for everybody? Yeah. Cool and groovy. So, where should we begin? Where else does everybody begin a topic like this? In the beginning. Right? Okay. We all know the Bible. You know, the dramatic pause here where I say, no, you really don't. You know why? Because we read the Bible in translation. We actually think there is a book called the Bible because we see one. You have to recognize the truth that that's not really the way it ever was. You see, historically speaking, let's talk about a people who lived a long, long time ago in a place very, very far away. You all know what I'm making a pun on here. But when we want to talk about the original Hebraic authors of biblical literature, we must recognize that's really what we're dealing with. Okay? In all due respect, whether we're going to talk about the biblical patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or later people like King David and Solomon, we're not talking about people who ever read, touched, known, imagined the King James Bible. They never read it. They've never been to church. Matter of fact, never went to synagogue, in that matter. They lived in a very, very different world. Now, why is it important for us to begin on this point? And the answer simply is because if we want to understand their words, we have to understand their world, because their words were spoken in their world, meaning in a context. You all understand what I'm saying here. And this is why I hold as a basis, you can never really understand the Bible in any translation. Now, for the record, the Bible makes it very clear that we are not alone in our universe. The Bible speaks of entities who are referred to as angels. The Bible makes references to Elohim Acherim, other gods. You'll find reference in the book of Daniel to a group called Watchers. Everybody knows Genesis 6 about the sons of the Elohim who came down and took the daughters of men, from whom were born the Titans, the giants of old. Remember, the word giants was not physical stature, but mighty in stature. Who are all of these? What are all of these? Well, before I begin to identify these entities, let's go back in history a wee bit to again start at the beginning. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, Va'aretz hayta tohu v'bohu, that the land was then something called, in Hebrew, void and desolate, tohu and bohu. Okay? Sounds like a natural continuation of the biblical story. Unless, of course, you read a revelation by the prophet Isaiah, who spoke and said that the world was not created in void and chaos, not in this state of tohu and bohu. Well, if it wasn't created that way in Genesis 1:1, how did it get to be like that by Genesis 1:2? Something's missing in the biblical text. Something's missing in the story. The narrative has a big gap in it. Now, understand from a Hebraic point of view, that which you call revelation has never ceased. Granted, there's no such thing as prophecy anymore, where in which God speaks and someone says, "Thus saith the Lord." No, we don't have that. Anybody who's doing that today? Okay, yeah. Don't get me started. We deal with all kinds of interesting people in the world, but okay, that's not what we're here to talk about. But in the Bible, when we talked about prophets, the Hebrew word was a navi, and a navi meant, like today in translation, a seer. You didn't become a prophet by happenstance. You actually had to go to prophet's school, what the Bible called the Chug Nevi'im. And you would there learn, you were trained to have an expansion of your mind and consciousness, to become aware of the other realities wherein which we exist simultaneously with our own right here and now. And in those higher states, which today we call higher consciousness, the higher self, you become aware of and interact with those who live there. That's their dimension, that's their world. And we exist there simultaneously with what we exist with here and now. So what the prophetic teachings were, this is what I teach in our KosherTorah school. These teachings aren't ancient and old and forgotten. We still practice them to this very day. We expand out, we interact with, we experience. And what we experience today, you'll find out is what people have been experiencing forever. As wise King Old Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. So what happened between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2? Well, the rabbis of old asked that question. They asked it like this. God created the world in the beginning. Well, what was God doing before he created our universe? He seems to be a busy God. He works from day up to day down, takes the day off, goes home, the God in heaven, drinks the divine beer or whatever, they do up in heaven, I don't know. Next work day starts, back to work again. Okay. Silliness aside, the rabbi said something very curious. They said, there we go, that God was busy creating and destroying other worlds. Now, some people have interpreted those worlds to be exclusively spiritual. And who the heck knows what that word really means? It just means not physical like we understand it. But that's not the way we understood it. We understood that there were pre-Adamic civilizations here on earth. And they were not just human civilizations, but more ancient civilizations that have lived here on earth, their earth, for maybe hundreds of thousands, millions of years. We don't know how to measure time in that respect. But in the Kabbalistic traditions, they understood parts of the Bible as codes. And one of those codes is found in the book of Genesis chapter 36, where there's a curious genealogy given of the sons of Esau. And it says, these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom prior to there being a king in Israel. You could sit and roll your eyes and say, gee whiz, that's like really enlightening educational information that God had to really include in the Bible. Okay. Yeah. Well, we recognize, like I said, that the words, the literature, was not written like we understand it today. The stories were intentionally coded language. And it's not enough that you just look at the words. The numerical value of the letters of the words spell out teachings, codes. And this is what was taught in the prophetic schools. And if you received this knowledge from the prophetic lineage, then you were called a receiver. The Hebrew word would be a mikubal, or today called a Kabbalist. Mind you, this is not the Kabbalah that they teach publicly out in the streets here of LA or anywhere else in the world. The authentic biblical Kabbalah from the tradition of the prophets was an experiential interaction with higher realms and domains. Keep this in mind, because God had other worlds before our own. These were the kings who reigned in the land of Edom prior to there being a king in Israel. King of Israel is symbolic of the Adamic race. The kings of Edom being the civilizations that existed before the story of Adam and Eve in the garden. And remember, the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, again, is a metaphorical symbol. We understand that prior to our Adamic civilization, there was another great, mighty, technologically advanced civilization here on Earth. I guess we could call it Atlantis, Lemuria, or whatever other the popular names that we go by today. But somehow there was a combination of factors which led to their devastation. It wasn't just a natural disaster and a natural end to this beautiful, idyllic world. But we have a tremendous amount of literature that describes them. They were human like us, but they were far superior than us. They looked at the humans as we are today, almost like they're pets, because they were of a higher spiritual, more advanced than we are today. But yet their society became corrupted. Political, economic, social, psychological devastation because of the imbalances that were in their lives. It led to a combination of natural disasters, which led to their collapse and fall. That was the pre-Adamic civilization of which we know. Prior to that, there must have been other civilizations, because we recognize and understand that there is a group of entities. Some, well, we call them the dragons. They are called in Hebrew the Teli. We read about them in an ancient book called the Sefer Yetzirah, which it says of them that they rule in the universe like a king upon its throne. These dragon-like humanoid entities, some identify as reptilians, but no, the reptilians are usually associated in our myth and tradition, if not other, as the bad guys. Well, the original Teli were not the bad guys, they were the good guys. We know them by another biblical name. They were called the Seraphim. The Seraphim are the angels referred to in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. The ones who say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the world is full of his glory." Now, many people interpret the Hebrew word Seraphim as the glowing ones, the fiery ones. But that's a mistake and not understanding Hebrew. The Hebrew word for burning is soref, same root but different vowels. The word seraph means reptilian. And the coded language of the original in Isaiah says there in the Hechal, the palace, which is the dimensional plane between our physical world and that next dimensional plane. And they were originally from here. And their job, this is their world to come, this is their, quote, heaven, their afterlife, to serve as higher entities who guide the earlier races, or I should say the later races. And then came that which we call Atlantis, that which fell. So what do we do now with the fallen world? Now we understand what happened between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. Genesis 1:1 speaks about the original beginning. There are other dimensions, other worlds that grew up and fell here on earth. And then we take it from the tohu and the bohu, and the devastation, that which fell and collapsed. Now let's jump ahead. We're not going to talk about the creation story of Adam and Eve, because that's something else. Let's jump ahead to the Garden of Eden. Just a couple of little tidbits there. Where was the Garden of Eden? Some say it's by the Tigris and Euphrates. Well, not according to our understanding. Our understanding in the Torah tradition speaks of the hollow earth belief, that there are places inside the earth, whether it's entirely hollow or there are caverns, if it's a parallel dimension. I guess we'll take a guided tour down there one of these days and we'll figure it out. But for centuries and millennia, people knew that that was inhabited. And the Garden of Eden is supposedly directly under the Holy Land to this day. And indeed, there are many, many stories that are told about the Garden of Eden and its access through the famous cave in the city of Hebron, which is said to be the burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the cave called Machpelah. It is said that in an inner cavern, Abraham discovered the bodies of Adam and Eve. He spoke to them telepathically. They said, "Why are you buried here?" He says, "Because this is the vortex to inner earth where the Garden of Eden is." And that's why he chose the place. And it's considered sacred for that reason to this very day. So, that's the Garden of Eden. That which we come to know as Adam and Eve, this is where they incarnated. Why down there? Because when the former civilization collapsed and fell, there were survivors. They went in 3 different directions. Some went to the stars. Some went to inner earth. Some to a parallel dimension. And it's from there that they have survived and thrived to this very day. So, many of our, in quote, extraterrestrial visitors are none other than our own ancestors. Not from our future, from our past. And this is their earth. This is their home. We are their children, their descendants. And this explains, in our understanding, why they look after us and guide us and direct us. But not all are so benevolent. Not all are so kind. So, we go into the Garden of Eden story. We all know there was this serpent hanging around on the tree. Well, we got to understand that a little bit better. First of all, the Bible makes it very, very clear that which we call Adam, that which we call the definition of our being human, it says that God breathed into the spirit of life, which means that it was not indigenous of this earth. The physical bodies, that which we know as Homo sapiens sapien, clearly is indigenous to earth. But that which we know is the human spirit and the human soul is not. And that is why we come to earth, we stay only temporarily, and then go back to where we came from, in a parallel dimension, or another world, or a parallel dimension on another world. That is the way we've always understood things, that when we make references to places called heaven. So the human soul was not indigenous to this earth. The human soul came here from beyond. What do you think the indigenous survivors of the previous civilization thought about that? They want to rebuild their world. They want to rebuild their civilization. They want to recreate it in obviously the exact same form that it was before, which was a state of imbalance, which led to its destruction. And that could not be, could it now? They could not do that, could they now? They tried and would fall again. Because the foundations of their mentality, their spirituality, was not calibrated in the proper energetic balance between what we can call heaven and earth. As such, the outsider, the Adamic race, came in. How do you think they were welcomed? They were not. And then a representative of the old civilization came to work with the Adamic souls, to teach them how to integrate, how to balance, how to adjust. But this one had the power, the ability, the psychic ability that was known in their ancient world. And therefore that ancient one was called a Minachesh. Some would translate that today as an enchanter. Well, the original letter Mem from Minachesh was left out of the text, and all that was left was Nachash, which means a serpent. So we have the, in quote, serpent in the Garden of Eden. The serpent is taught by Lexa to have stood erect, had arms and legs, obviously, no one spoke. When was the last time any of you spoke with a snake and got an answer? Right? So, it was obviously what some would call a reptilian. But that's not necessarily its physical form as much what it was intended to do. It was intended to subvert what they considered to be the intruder race. I wrote about this recently in a series of essays called the Disclosure Essays on my website, KosherTorah.com. And I put it in a language so that people would understand how the ancients came to understand and view the creation of Adam. Look at it from this point. When we read the Bible, whose point of view is the Bible representing? It's obviously representing the point of view of Adam, the children of Yudke, Vavke, Hashem. These are the growing race here on earth. But the Pre-adamics didn't see it that way. And many of them resented force coming from the outside. They were useless to resist. But that led to an enmity that exists this very day. And this is the source of, if you will, spiritual, psychological, or conflict between, if you will, an us and a them. Moving forward through time. Adam and Eve, who are actually symbolic representatives of a race of beings, and not just individuals, became entrapped in this dimensional plane. They got disconnected from the higher dimensional planes, which was their natural home. It was kind of like trying to straddle two worlds at once, trying to have dual consciousness at once. Today, we want to experience an altered state of reality. We have to close down this state of reality and go into the other. Can you imagine if you can be in both places simultaneously at once? That was the ability of the original Adamic race. And the loss of that ability is what entrapped our souls here. And is the reason why we are trying to find our way home ever since. And the forces and entities that be, they have their own agenda. They don't want us here. They want the world back for themselves. They want to restore the world to what the Bible calls tohu vabohu. So what do you think these entities have come down to us over the years, and what do we call them? Some refer to them as shedim, otherwise known to us as demons. Now, I just described to you something very, very different from what you might be familiar with in your traditional Christian or Islamic traditions, which would think these are the minions of Satan who fell when Satan had this great civil war with Michael in heaven in prehistoric times. Well, that's out of the book of Revelations. It's not out of the Judaic and the Hebrew and the original biblical traditions. So these pre-adamics have been known to be good and bad. In our Hebrew tradition, they're called shedim, and some of which are known to be good, and others are bad. Some of which are helpful to humans, and others which are not. We find the same understanding of them in the Islamic tradition, where they're called the jinn. You know, genes? Remember I dream of genie? Barbara Eden and all the rest? Remember that? Everybody wanted a genie like Barbara Eden, but I keep dreaming. I mean, this is you see how these things have become absorbed into our American culture, and we don't really connect the dots between all the sources where all these things come from. You know, 1960s sitcom, who would think? I mean, there are many, many programs on today to deal with occult topics. Some more ridiculous than others, but some curiously hitting the nail right on the head. And I've seen that another time. But not this time. Moving right along, as we know, these sons of God came down. Remember Genesis chapter 6. Well, who were they? Well, when the original Adamic souls were coming from whatever parallel dimension they were coming from onto Earth, there was not full agreement in whatever places out there that there was. And there was complaints registered in that place called heaven. And many of the entities objected to an outside race coming in to rectify things and elevate things. Kabbalistic tradition discusses this in great details. I have, hours and hours of lectures where I go into old Hebrew Aramaic texts and I extract all of these things for people who are interested in really, getting the details out of that. My book, Alien Angels and Demons, is available in the marketplace over there. Because, in all due respect to our show, I've been told they never give me the time that people want, so that's why I wrote the book. So if people are interested in all this stuff, all the source material and everything else, it's all in the book. But anyway, my point is, these, in quote, sons of Elohim came down to earth. They took human women. Who were these guys? Well, amongst those, in quote, angels. Now let's take a step back and talk about angels. The Hebrew word for an angel is malach, which actually means a messenger. A messenger means that they're serving a higher dimensional power and force. It's a big discussion in religion. Are angels physical or non-physical? Most want to say, well, they're non-physical. Why would we say that? Well, because every time that we see an angel, it is through a vision or something like that. What is a vision? It's a telepathic, psychic interaction with an entity in a parallel dimension, which we can only experience by the mind shifting into a parallel dimension. That is what every prophet did. That is what every high priest did. That is what's done to this day by those in the authentic prophetic Kabbalistic schools. You interact. I knew one rabbi in Jerusalem, Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri. Read about him online. He's out there on YouTube and stuff like that. And when he was in presence, you would think the guy was like, psychotic, because he's sitting there talking to you and he's looking around, and it seems like he's, communicating with others, and all of a sudden he has these telepathic psychic revelations for you that like totally blow you away. And I once asked him, where are you getting the information? Oh, from them. Who? Them. I said, you see? And he looked at me and says, and you don't. And this is, I was young. You have to learn over the years. But anyway, getting back to the point. These pre-adamics who had gone to the stars were the ones who were objecting with the heavenly force and power. We want to fix the planet. Why someone new? And a group of them got together and said, we're coming down to Earth, and we are going to intervene and help humanity fix things. And what's the first thing that happened? They see all those hot and sexy women out there, and ooh la la, and we all know the rest that happens. Now think about this. Hold on a second. If these angels are these non-corporeal guys, with the big long flowing robes, with the big wings, right? They're spirit. I don't know about you, but you can't really, have children with spirits. You fantasize all you want, but it's not going to lead to pregnancies. And if they're such a higher extraterrestrial superior race, why are they interested in human women? Right? In all due respect, if we want to consider ourselves to be a higher species, are we really attracted to members of the opposite sex of a lower species? Ladies and gentlemen, both. When was the last time you went to the monkey, display in the zoo and said, oh, I like that orangutan. Oh, yeah, I like that gorilla. Oh, come here, chimpanzee baby. I don't think, I hope not. You never know. We live in strange times. But if these entities were so much higher than us, then wouldn't they be looking down at us in that similar form? But that's not what happened now, is it? They took human wives, but they were still more advanced than we are. They had the technology to evolve themselves biologically, psychologically, and most important, what we call psychically. What happened to them? What happened to their children? Well, we all know the story from the Bible. They somehow messed up the entire plan of things, and voila comes the flood. Now, from our understanding of how the flood came, a meteor literally was, flung at the earth by whatever force powers that be, came in very close to our orbit like this, and literally had the gravitational effect to suck the oceans up into the atmosphere. And then as the planet went back and fallen away, the oceans go whoosh and washed everybody away. Everybody. You don't know about Noah and the Lord, right? You know about Noah's Ark. But there were others who survived in inner earth. They never were away. And some speak of the children of the Nephilim being around to this very day. But what happened to the fallen angels themselves? Well, some say, they're being punished. No, they're not. And yes, they are. According to our understanding, what happened to them is something very profound. The heavenly forces decreed and said, you came down here to correct and fix the human race? Fine. Your punishment will be that's exactly what you will be required to do. You will stay earthbound, hidden in the bowels of inner earth, being in a parallel dimension or a cave, who knows. And you will guide the human race in accordance to the heavenly decrees. And you will instruct humanity and guide them until humanity achieves its higher consciousness, higher ability, its rectification. And this group then, from Genesis 6, became known later in the book of Daniel as the Watchers, the heavenly court. Those who look after us and watch over us, who we can argue and debate whether they are or not they're doing a good job. Because according to all the source material, they fight and they bicker with one another just like we do. And unfortunately, their psychic and telepathic ability have influence over us, causing many of these sufferings and plagues here on earth. So, we have angels. We have demons. We have extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials have not just been coming around since after World War II. As a matter of fact, what happened in Roswell was not an extraterrestrial event at all. It was very clear that the craft that crashed was not an intergalactic craft. It was a local craft. It allegedly came from inner Earth. And its inhabitants, you know, little gray guys, well, we know who they are. We have their names. They're called the Nishaya. And they're also indigenous to this earth. And that's who and what they are. Because the original Adamic race from inner earth, remember, took on many, many different forms, many, many different types of lifestyle, many, many types of life being, evolved in many different directions. One of which might have been these. And they're supposedly in the service of these higher entities and higher elements and forces that be. So, when we talk about the extraterrestrials, who are they? Where are they? Many of you might be aware of my dear colleague, Professor Seth Shostak, who's here at the conference now. On our first Alien Con, we were on a panel, and he made a comment, said, why would, if there really are entities out there, why would they contact us? They would be so different, so divorced from anything human that we might not even have any kind of point of reference of contact whatsoever. And that's true if his premise was correct. If there was somehow life evolving comprehensively different from us in some far-off place. But that's not the case of who has been visiting us. A point that our show always makes is the ancient aliens, and Robert always is asking, where are they? What happened to them? Why did they go away? Our understanding is they've never gone anywhere, and they're always here, and they've never left. And many of the things that Giorgio and others talk about that the aliens did, we don't look at being alien at all. We understand them to be pre-adamic. And because they are no longer here on surface Earth, which the Bible calls Tevel, they are in inner Earth. Why do they stay there? Well, it's become their home. The stars have become their home. They've been there, 10,000 years? I mean, how old is human civilization? Can you imagine living in a place for 10,000 years and all of a sudden you're going to pick up and move? Trust me, can you imagine the clutter you gather over 10,000 years? You know, it's like we live in a house for 5 years. It's like, then they try to move 10,000 years. No, the earth belongs to the younger race. They know that. And they interact as they do with the intent and the purpose to bring us to a future place. In our religious circles, they are the ones who are communicating with the prophets, the seers, the psychics. And they are the ones who have given us the vision of a greater future. In religion, we call that, in quote, greater future, the coming of the Messiah, the new heavens and the earth and the like. Words describe many things, but it's too something deeply ingrained and known in the human collective psyche, that we have a higher purpose and a destiny for ourselves, and that somehow, some way, we will achieve it. So we want to again talk about aliens and angels and demons. And we looked at the ancient stories, the ancient literature, and we look at modern literature and put them side by side. Take away all of the superficial cultural differences and look at the essence of the stories. You can scratch your head and say, wait a second. There's a similarity here. Today, we're all very familiar with something called alien abductions. Well, you've had those stories in literature a long, long time ago. Again, I cover these things in my book. Well, what are they? Are these evil minions of Satan who are trying to steal your soul? Well, in our Jewish tradition, there's no such thing as the minions of Satan. There's no such place as hell. There's no Satan out there duking it out with God for your soul. This is all nice religious mythology, which is intent to, scare the bejeebers out of you to keep you on the straight and narrow. But if you go look at the original Bible, that character called Satan is nothing other than one of the sons of the Elohim. Read about him in Job chapter 1, whose job it is to keep his eyes open about what's happening on earth. That's all. He has no greater power than just being, if you will, a reporter. The Hebrew word Satan, Satan, actually means an accuser. His job is to report to heaven what's happening on earth. Isn't that curious that God, the Omnipotent, doesn't know what's happening on earth, that he has to have a messenger come and give him reports? Curious, eh? Eric von Daniken had a book, and he said the gods were astronauts or something like that. I just listened to the audio version recently. And he's asking questions like that. How could the God of the Bible not be omnipotent and omniscient and know all these things that the Bible always says? God speaks and God hears, and God didn't know where Adam was, that he has to ask, etc., and so on. Well, these things were well known in the prophetic tradition. We know that which we call God is not a little old man with a gray beard sitting on a cloud somewhere. That's a great painting in the Sistine Chapel, but it's not a portrayal of reality. That which we call God, we call in Hebrew the Ein Sof, the infinite. It's a consciousness. It's an awareness that permeates all things. Kind of sounds like this force in Star Wars, but it's bigger than that. And that in itself has, if you will, its faces. That's what the Kabbalists call them. Faces, not physical, but symbolic. Ways and means in which the minds of entities in creation can experience this cosmic reality. And that there are those races greater than us who have a greater perspective of these. And every one of them says, Aye mimkom kivodo la'aretzo. Where is its authentic and original place? Because not even those higher entities who we call the messengers, the angels, ever see God. Because there's nothing to see. There's only that which to experience. So part and parcel of the prophetic biblical tradition, that which we talk about in all the world religions, you want to find God, where do you look? You don't look inside a book. You don't look inside doctrine and theology. They say, close the books and open your heart. Look inside. But what does that actually mean? I mean, we can speak to Professor Young, who's here on the panels, and he'll give you, he's a psychologist, like me, Jungian trained, and he'll tell you that this is, symbolic and metaphorical, which it is. William Henry speaks in the same way, and that's correct. But it's a lot more than that. You see, the external reality of the scientific and the internal reality of the spiritual or psychological are still one reality, two sides of the same coin. And we must remember that the ancients had a spiritual technology, a power of the development of mind, which did not need mechanical devices. So whether we're talking about Roswell or Mount Sinai, communication was always telepathic, mind to mind. So for those of you who've ever seen the, Cecil B. DeMille version of Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, I love that movie. For me, it's one of the best comedies because I love it. It's just such a fun thing to see. You see the fire riding into the sky, I am the Lord, it's like right then. You wonder what kind of script he's writing in and stuff. But anyway, no, never really happened like that. The Bible makes it very clear that the people heard the voice of God, but never the word of God. The voice was a sound that was heard in the ear, but the word was the understanding telepathically, which was heard in the mind. And what that happened? Was there some kind of an energetic or a genetic DNA shifting, altering on those who stood there? Very possibly. That somehow influenced those who stood there as they spread throughout the world and brought the message of collective and greater consciousness to all humanity. That's the great secret of Mount Sinai. But telepathic communication clearly is the extraterrestrial way of communication. We know from the Bible, it says when God wants to speak, he speaks through dreams and visions. Dreams and visions are visionary. They take picture image, metaphors, archetypes, we call that in psychology. We've all had vivid dreams. You all wake up from the dreams and go, wow, what did that mean? Remember from your Bible stories, Pharaoh had that dream. Nebuchadnezzar the king had that dream. And every one of those dreams had a message and meaning with nothing related to the symbol literally interpreted. So you had to understand dream language. Modern psychology seeks to do this. Jung does this. Erich Fromm has done this. These things are important for us to understand that inside ourselves, that higher part of ourselves, that other part of ourselves, which is existing in that parallel dimension. Just because we lost an awareness of our own higher self does not mean that we have lost that higher self. It just means you're not aware of it. It's like turning your back. I don't see you now if I turn my back to the opposite. Did you all disappear and cease to exist because I did so? But I believe I don't see you, and if I don't see you, then therefore you don't exist. Is that really rational? You can make it rational if you want, but no, it's not real. The higher reality, psychology would call it your unconscious. That's the unexplored territory. That is the final frontier. In respect to William Shatner, Captain Kirk, who's here at our conference, doing the new show, I think, The Unexplained. It's going to be following Ancient Aliens. I heard that I'm going to be a guest on one of the shows. So, yippee-ki-yay. We'll always have fun stuff to talk about. But anyway, part and parcel of understanding the identity of aliens, angels, and demons isn't just to accept, okay, this is what it says, so this is what I accept. No. You have to come to experience for yourselves. And you say, oh wow, having a spiritual experience and experience other entities, that would be frightening, wouldn't it? I don't know. Do you have something to be afraid of? I guess if you do, then there's something that's going to be frightening. But if you have nothing to be afraid of, then what's the concern? We always see through the vision of our own minds. That's why many of the traditions around the world, when they were, shall I say, creating myth and story, deep down knew that they were creating stories. And there was always that little guilty edge to it. And that's why they created and developed negativisms and scary stories about these other entities to try to scare you off, to impose upon you a mindset of fear. But remember quantum reality. Perception is everything. If you look out in fear, all you will see is the fearful. If you look out in faith, positivity, and light, that's what you'll see. So in understanding in the prophetic tradition, experience is the most important thing. Now, there are all kinds of meditative traditions. Believe it or not, every one of you are already practicing right now a meditative tradition that you might not even be aware of. How many of you daydream? Just sitting down, and all of a sudden, ideas just pop into your head. Where do those ideas come from? That's right, your unconscious, your higher self. Symbolically, we would say the little birdie spoke into your ear. Because that part of you, which is still there, still talks to you if and when you're willing to listen. And when you go into these other dimensions, you get to meet who's there. So if you were going to have a meditative vision, like Ezekiel the prophet, you would then see and experience what was there. So his great chariot vision was not a mechanical spaceship. Even though the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage, did you ever see that? That's a really freaky film. They try to portray the Merkabah spaceship. Very, very interesting portrayal, but not accurate in one respect. Because what Ezekiel saw was that parallel dimensional world, which has its own laws of physics. It's different from ours, but not completely oblivious. So therefore, when he shifted in spirit, he could see them and how they traveled how they communicated, and they interacted with him, bringing to us teaching and education. None of this is lost to us today. It's still around for anybody who wants it. It's found in dozens of traditions all around the world. Pick that which is right for you. Pick your path which is right for you. Because I will tell you one thing about disclosure, and then we'll take some questions. Disclosure is never, ever, ever going to come from government. What I've shared with you now, our governments know. They've discovered this. They know what's under the ice in Antarctica. They know the truth about all the ancients. And the reason why they can never, ever, ever go public is because if they ever said, well, let's take a step back. If and when we discovered life 20,000 light years out there, right? Who cares? It would be a great entertaining story. It'd be all over the news for a couple of days. And then we're going to get back to watch whatever programs we were watching. We still got to pay the bills, right? We still got to get up and do our work and do all the rest of that jazz. So it's nice. Okay, somebody's out there. Who cares? Far away. But what happens if they're not far away? What happens if they're right here, right now? And our governments are not in control. And that these can talk to us mind to mind at any time and interact with us at every time. And they're watching us. If you were in government, would that be something you would want to disclose? That, I don't think so. But disclosure will come. It's going to come from every one of us. Because the growing number of people becoming more aware. The reason why whatever forces that we put into Eric Von Daniken's mind, write your book. The forces that put into the mind of Kevin Burns, make this program, is talking to all of us today. And there's an elevation and a growth. Disclosure will come from us. And as it does, we all know. And we will then usher in and walk into that new world which we're waiting for. So for those of you who want like background, more information about all this which I've talked about, like I said, my book's out there in the marketplace if you're interested. I have dozens and dozens of courses online at my website, KosherTorah.com. And of course, we have our YouTube channel and Facebook and all the rest. If you want to stay in touch and learn and see all my blabbing away, as I always do, you're welcome to join and follow suit. So thank you all for listening. We have about 13 minutes left. Are we going to put up a mic to ask questions here in the center? I guess we can do that as we've done in the past. And if not, then that's cool. We're going to put it on the side there? Okay. Well, I'm still waiting to see where the mic is. Okay. Right, left, I don't know. Okay. Sorry, I saw you first, so let's go first, and then I'll take it from one side to the next.
Are we supposed to believe that there's a chemical shortcut to God?
A chemical shortcut to God? No. A chemical shortcut to expanded consciousness, but of course, that's medically proven. But if you take a chemical shortcut to expanded consciousness, and you literally jumpstart an opening, what are you going to see? And for those who are prepared, fine. But for those who are not prepared, it can be very devastating. So for those who are trained in certain shamanistic traditions with the use of, say, ayahuasca, well, they're prepared. But for those here in the Western world who want to entertain themselves with a drug like an LSD, and they experience things that leads to nothing but problems. So again, I'm very anti-drug use, specifically because people don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to use it right. Okay, this side.
Rabbi,
A little closer to the mic, please.
sure. I've done a little bit of research on Tefillin,
Mm-hmm.
please excuse the pronunciation, and they're totally inorganic. It doesn't make any sense that this tradition go back thousands of years to wear a square box on your head and a box on your arm, unless it's some kind of broadcasting and receiving device.
It's more than that. You can go and see how the phylacteries, the tefillin, are actually touching specific points on the meridians of the arm and the head and have acupuncture value. You go Google that. I have something about that on KosherTorah.com. So that tradition of these phylacteries dates back literally to Qumran. They found these phylacteries in the Dead Sea Scrolls stuff. So it's an ancient tradition, and it was known to have energetic properties to this day.
It looks to me like they're mechanical devices rather than some kind of organic.
Well, organic and mechanical, like I said, there's not really a fine line of demarcation between them. They kind of work together.
Thank you.
Sure. I got to go fast because we're running out of time, so forgive me. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Since you said that there was, they went to 3 places, the hollow earth and the outer stars and other...
Parallel universe, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
Right.
So what do you believe happens to us after we die?
Well, that's
Do we
big.
go to heaven? Are we reincarnated?
Well,
or...
according to our understanding, remember, each and every soul is part and parcel of the greater collective whole. So no one ever really dies. Everybody kind of gets it in the end. No, we don't have a permanent heaven and a hell, but you take your heaven and hell with you when you go. So if you're an evil, rotten person, you've done horrible, rotten things, when you get to the other side, guess what's waiting for you? All that evil, rotten stuff that you've done. And you got to work out what they call in the East your karma. That's bad stuff. If you're good, I guess you can call it that, and you experience your perception of what the afterlife would be. Because think about this. If you are an evangelical Christian, would you want to go to Catholic heaven with the Virgin Mary? If you are a Christian, would you want to go into Muslim heaven or Buddhist heaven? No. And our understanding is not just one heaven where everybody gets along. It's rather the projection of the individual mindset, and everybody experiences the afterlife as they would expect it to be. That's how come you have many of these out-of-body experiences, and every person from their own culture and religion sees exactly what they're expected to. Christians see Jesus, Catholics see Mary, Hindus see Krishna. And it's just understood because this is what we call the lower level of paradigm before the souls can come back to earth and continue the learning process involved beyond that.
Okay, so basically, yes, you believe that there is...
Reincarnation, absolutely. Reincarnation is an integral belief in Judaism today. You find that in all the books.
Thank you.
Ah, my young friend. Real quick though, so we have no time for a long question.
Do you think that if you were in a sort of meditation that you could access in your extended consciousness either in the hollow earth or in the stars? Or
In other words, projecting to all those places? Yeah, we do that all the time.
Okay.
A very quick question. My guardian angel. Is there, is not there?
You, your higher self, your own higher self is your guardian angel.
My conscious.
Your own higher self. Called your unconscious if you want to use a psychological term, but your higher self is your guardian angel. And that's why those who can have an experience with our guardian angel will always see, if you look carefully, will always look very familiar. Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to thank you for the first bit you did leading up to who the reptilians are. I feel like I'm the sole ambassador for the reptilians lately. People are always rolling their eyes at me, but the idea that they've been here forever and aren't all evil. I have a question I really wanted to know. What do you think is a respectful way to refer to them, or a name that they gave us to call them rather than reptilians? Because I don't like that.
The original Hebrew word, Teli.
Can you spell it?
T-E-L-I. Go onto my YouTube channel, and you can see my lessons on it.
Yes.
I have other classes on it on
I am
KosherTorah.com.
going to devour it.
And in the Chinese tradition, they're called Long.
Thank you.
Okay?
Very much.
That's what they look like.
I don't want them to be mad at me.
Ah. Yes.
Yes, the Holy Bible tells in Genesis 6 that a guy named Enoch walked with God.
And then
there was
was
the
not.
whole book, the book of Enoch.
3 of them.
And I was wondering, why was this edited out of the Bible? Because it was
Okay.
full of a tremendous information about
Okay.
demons
Yep.
and angels.
Okay. The books of Enoch were never written actually by the historical person Enoch. They were written in the 2nd century before the Common Era, at a time when it was forbidden by law to write prophetic literature. So he's putting a pseudepigrapha, meaning in the names of someone else. But what that, 3 books actually, not 1 but 3. I've actually taught 30 Enoch. I got a, I think, 17-hour course on it on KosherTorah for those who want to take it. Goes into all the details that when you ascend, you interact. You're going into a busy parallel universe. It's not just like this blah light. I mean, you're walking in there. It's like walking and popping in the middle of the street. You get on the sidewalk and know where the heck you're going, and you interact with these entities. So in the 2nd century before the Common Era, it was the whole Greek tradition, the Maccabean times, the wars and stuff like that. The prophetic tradition of the Bible never ceased. The practitioners of the prophetic ascent never stopped. Even though we don't hear God talking anymore from the days of the book of Daniel, interactions with the angels has continued ever since. That's what the Enochian literature is all about. No one on that side? Okay, we're all done? Well then, thank you very much.